Welcome back to Season 2 of the Sweet Taste of Balance podcast series. I am your host, Dr Idrees Mughal, and today's episode is Balancing Acts, Mastering Fitness and Nutrition. Today, I'm here with Luke Hanna.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So before we jump into today's episode, why don't you just explain to the audience, who you are and what it is that you do?
So I guess the short version is I got into fitness and being interested in nutrition in my early teens for a couple different reasons. One of them because I wanted to improve my strength and performance for sport. And then the other was, I suppose I just, like most people who get into the gym, they want to improve their confidence and improve the way they look. And then, I just started becoming more and more passionate about it, learning more about nutrition. And then probably from about the age of 15 or 16, I realized I wanted to work in the fitness industry. So then I eventually went to university, did my undergrad in sport and exercise science, became qualified as a personal trainer, have been working as a personal trainer in person and online for over 10 years. And then more recently, did my master's in obesity and clinical nutrition. And it's a quick summary, I guess, for the last 15, 20 years.
No, that's fantastic. I think it's nice it goes on to the first question, which is, you've obviously got experience in both fitness and nutrition, right? So how important do you think it is to incorporate, both fitness and nutrition when it comes to trying to manage or lose weight?
I think it's incredibly important to combine both. And you always see this argument, which is more important, diet or exercise? And most people will rightly say nutrition and diet should be the focus, but it shouldn't really be an either or discussion. You should be doing both ideally. And even if you completely ignore all of the health benefits that you get from exercise, it's going to help you maintain your strength and your function as you lose weight. And of course, when we're talking about weight loss, what we're really talking about is fat loss. Most people don't want to lose muscle tissue as well. And, even if you are, dieting well and getting enough protein, if you're not training, you are going to be more likely to lose muscle tissue. So then you're going to put your metabolic health at risk and aesthetics for some people. So combining the exercise with diet is incredibly important. And we also know that exercise is one of the most important behaviors for maintaining weight loss long term as well, because a lot of people can lose weight, but then they struggle to maintain that weight loss. So then they regain it. And so exercising is going to help you actually achieve that long term.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's a case of an inherent effect of exercising that helps them maintain the weight loss, or do you think it's like a psychological aspect to it, where if they're engaging in healthy behaviors, it can also make it easier to adhere to other healthy kind of diet behaviors? Like, why do you think exercising makes it easier, or kind of to give someone a more successful outcome with their weight loss journey?
I don't think we know specifically, but I think it's a combination of both those things. And maybe there's an element of exercise helping with appetite control and things like that, although it does depend on the individual. But I think it's a combination.
So essentially, what you're saying is it's not an all or nothing mindset. You should, or everyone should be trying to incorporate some aspect of both, whereas the priority should be nutrition. Is that a fair summary there?
Yeah, I think diet is definitely the focus. As the old saying goes, you can't out-train a bad diet, but exercise is going to support you massively, and should be something that everyone is aiming to do. I don't think people need to be stressing about what types of exercise they have to do specifically. I always say that they should do what they enjoy, what they can adhere to. Again, in an ideal world, they'll be doing a combination of some form of resistance training, because that's where you're going to get most of the benefits for maintaining or maybe even gaining a bit of muscle tissue, which most people don't think is possible in a weight loss journey. But actually we do know that body recomposition is possible, which is where you can gain muscle tissue and lose fat at the same time. And then doing some cardiovascular exercise for the health benefits is important too, if you can. But ultimately you should do what you can adhere to.
Yeah, lovely point. You mentioned that quickly about body recomposition. Do you think that's possible for all individuals, or do you think it's easier in some demographics or in some cases?
I think it's definitely going to be more or less difficult for certain people. If you are more experienced, it's going to be more difficult. It's going to be easier for people probably when they're first starting out, when it's going to be a bit more, their body's going to be a bit more receptive to exercise and those sort of anabolic stimuli. If you are putting yourself in a large calorie deficit, so if you're in a deficit of more than 500 calories per day, that's going to make it much more difficult as well. So there are certain cases where it's going to be more or less difficult. And don't get me wrong, I think it's difficult to do to a significant degree in pretty much all situations. But if that's something that people want to adhere to, or achieve, I think it's not a bad thing to look to do anyway, because the things that you need to do to achieve that are the things that you need to be doing anyway, but you just need to fine tune and really make sure that you're nailing them. So for example, getting enough protein, you might even want the protein goals to be a little bit higher than the general recommendations for weight loss, or even for general recommendations for hypertrophy. You want to be nailing your sleep, making sure that you're getting enough good quality sleep, stress management, all those sorts of things.
So just so the audience knows, what would you recommend their kind of protein goals be then?
So the research looking at body recomposition specifically typically uses fat-free mass goals, which for most people is not that useful because they don't have access to equipment that's going to accurately measure that. So typically what I recommend is taking the general goals for hypertrophy, which is normally around 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight per day, and just aiming for the upper end if that's possible. Now, for some people, if they have a lot of weight to lose, obviously aiming for that upper end of those ranges could actually come out quite high. So you've got to apply a bit of common sense, and maybe roughly what you're eating now, and then you can increase that by 20, 30 grams until you're used to that. Then you can try and increase that as well.
Yeah, fantastic kind of tips there. And useful to put some numbers to that as well, so people can actually visualize, what it is they're aiming for. Many people, they try to, over restrict their diet and almost simultaneously try to, go to the gym for the sole purpose of burning a load of calories, right? Like 1,000 calories or whatever. And they can kind of go back on this yo-yo journey between actually not being able to do that and then resorting to higher calories and back to lower calories, then, having an intense workout and then not being able to do another intense workout, for example. In your kind of experience working with people, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see when people are trying to synchronize their nutrition and fitness goals together?
Honestly, I think it's the biggest mistake that I see is people setting goals that are too ambitious. When I'm doing consultations with people and we're speaking about how many days per week they want to aim to get into the gym or do whatever exercise it is they want to do, most people will say, I want to go 5 days a week, 6 days per week, or something like that. And then I ask them, okay, well, what are you doing now? Or what have you been doing the last couple of months? And they'll say once, or maybe nothing. And then, so I always say, well, do you think it's reasonable to go from that to 5 or 6 days per week? And normally they'll say, okay, probably not. So setting a goal that is pushing yourself and doing a little bit more than you're used to, but is a little bit more appropriate or reasonable. So if someone's doing once or twice, then maybe they aim for 3 or maybe even 4. And then once you get used to that, if you want to do more, you can. But you don't need to be training every day to get the benefits from exercise. A couple hours per week, you're going to be getting the majority of those benefits, and then it's going to be diminishing returns. And that's not to say that doing more than that is not worth it. It is, but you're going to get most of those benefits at the lower end of those goals anyway. So you don't need to be killing yourself. And if you set appropriate goals, hopefully that will reduce the chances of burnout.
Yeah. As you were speaking, it just kind of reminded me of someone I've been working with recently. A very, very busy guy, healthcare professional. And when I first started with him, I remember he was like, yeah, I used to be kind of into fitness and stuff. And now I want to do a walk in the morning, a walk in the evening. I want to work out, 5 days a week. I'm proper motivated. And I was like, mate, yes, you can. The reality is you probably are motivated enough to do this for like 2-3 weeks. But let me ask you this question in like 4 weeks' time, right? And he said, actually, yeah, you're kind of right. Yeah, I do get very tired after work. So like, I can see how setting realistic expectations from the get-go can be a very kind of empowering tool for people.
The question I always ask them as well is what I say they should ask themselves is, can I see myself doing this in a year's time, in 2 years' time? If the answer is no, it's probably not appropriate.
Yeah, no, brilliant point. So how do you then make sure that people you work with, the clients that you work with, don't lose momentum during a kind of dietary or fitness intervention?
Yeah, so of course, carrying on from the things we just spoke about, setting appropriate goals is going to be important. The second thing is choosing things that you enjoy or at least hate the least. That's going to be really important for long-term adherence. And third, I think having some form of accountability is really important as well. And of course, people will automatically think that means having a coach, which, yes, can be helpful. And I think having a financial investment helps people adhere as well, because otherwise they feel like they're wasting their money if they don't follow the advice that's being given to them. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be that. Of course, coaching is not always financially viable, but it might even just be going to classes where, if you cancel, you might be wasting your money or something like that. Or it doesn't have to be that either. It can be just going with a friend, finding a buddy to train with. And then if you're thinking, oh, well, I don't really want to go today, it's not just yourself that you're kind of, hesitate to say letting down, but it might be someone else as well. So you're probably more likely to actually adhere to your initial goals if you're doing it with someone else.
So it's that aspect of social accountability, right? This is one of the things I also tell kind of patients or clients that I'm working with, is that try to involve your family members. Tell them about the goals you have, tell them about the food you're trying to eat, tell them about the meals that you're planning in the week or the workouts you're planning. And more often than not, they'll be like the first port of call rather than even yourself as like a clinician or a fitness coach, for example. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's spot on. Now, I want to kind of pivot to a slightly different topic here, is that people within the fitness community, they're very vocal about lots of nutrition related things, as you and I both know. And one of the topics that I kind of harped on about is the role that non-sugar sweeteners can play in someone's fitness journey, right? So some people say things like they can impact recovery, they can impact kind of energy levels, they might actually negatively affect your fitness journey or your weight loss journey, for example. How do you view them and how do you weigh non-sugar sweeteners' role when it comes to pros and cons when designing like a meal plan for someone, for example?
So from the energy perspective, there's absolutely no evidence for that as far as I'm aware. And, many products or supplements even that contain non-sugar sweeteners can contain other things that can boost performance, such as caffeine, which, is the most effective performance enhancing supplement really that most people can get access to. And then from a sort of weight management perspective, we have plenty of research showing that they can help people satisfy sweet cravings and adhere to their diets. So I don't think people need to go out of their way to include more of them, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with including them if you want to, or you are already having them as part of your diet. And, we know that they're safe. All the sort of governing bodies and research show that they're safe. So if you want to include those and it helps you adhere to your goals long term, then that's absolutely fine.
So I take it that you don't agree with the statement that we hear so commonly that, non-sugar sweeteners or artificial sweeteners increase food cravings.
No, I don't. And I think anyone who really has actually, dieted or tried to lose weight will know that that's not true. I mean, I don't drink sort of things like, for example, Diet Coke that often, but I find that a very useful tool if I get to the afternoon and I've got an hour or two until I'm going to eat. Just grabbing something like that I know that's not going to contain many calories is a really easy way to sort of stave off those hunger pangs. So I think from personal experience and anecdote, but also from a research perspective, we just know that that's not true. And obviously, there is individual variability. So there may be a small subset of people who do find that maybe it does increase cravings, but I think for most people, that's not the case.
Yeah, well said. Speaking about, tools for interventions, one tool that is commonly talked about and often utilized is the concept of meal planning, right? So what tips would you give to someone who wants to include meal planning if they've never meal planned before?
So I think you need to get rid of the idea or the sort of image of someone prepping all of their meals for the week on a Sunday. This very arduous process, and that does work for some people, and that's absolutely fine. But for example, I don't do that. I don't think you have to do that. And most people I work with don't really want to do that either. So what you can think of is, for example, what I do personally do is when I'm making dinner, all I do is double up the ingredients, cook that up, set aside half of it, and then I have another meal for the next day. So something to have that's home cooked for lunch. And, it's really no extra effort to chop up a couple extra ingredients and chuck it into the pan when I'm already doing that. So you're essentially halving the cooking you're doing throughout the week, really, doing that. And then you can also vary up day to day a bit more as well. So that's one thing. Also, in single ingredient prepping is also quite a good idea. So, for example, if you want to, an obvious example is a bunch of chicken. If you want to prep up your proteins for like 3 or 4 days, just cook up a bunch of chicken, and then on those days where you have less time, that's just one less thing that you have to do, and you can just chuck it together with some other things that are potentially, quick to prep.
Right, okay, fine. So you mean do the bulk of, let's say, the protein source,
Yeah.
right, and then have that over a few days, and you can, add a bit of packet rice or just quickly boil some pasta or what, chop some veggies. Okay, fantastic.
So you don't need to be like prepping all of your meals for the entire week, or even all of the ingredients for all of those meals.
So let's discuss quickly your kind of number one mealtime, strategy or tip to maximize, gym gains and recovery without spending, hours meal prepping.
Yeah, so I think one of the best things to do, and I do this all the time with clients, is get to know which types of foods, first of all, work for you and your goals and are convenient and easy to prep, and have them there available. So things that are typically non-perishable, so things that don't degrade quickly. So it could be frozen vegetables or tinned beans, or so a really good example. I got home from my long flight on Sunday, didn't want to go out and do shopping, but what we had some frozen vegetables, some beans, we had some like chili oil or sauces in the fridge, we had some noodles, in a packet, straight to wok type noodles, and then we used just some frozen sort of fake meat chicken, but you could obviously use whatever you want, and chuck that, and that was a perfectly balanced, easy meal. Didn't even have to go out to get anything. And in an alternative situation, I might have said, I don't want to make anything, I'm going to order something which and get takeaway, which might not have been as ideal for my goals. So just having those really easy things, and it can be other carbohydrate sources like microwavable rice or wraps. Obviously they won't last as long, but things like that are just really easy to throw together in 5 to 10 minutes, and you have a balanced meal.
Fantastic points. I think another kind of aspect of meal planning or meal prepping is that people often can lack simply the motivation, or kind of lack the kind of the desire to actually get up and be in the kitchen and have to actually do something after a long day. So in the situation where, let's say, someone's just done a 12, 13-hour shift at work, for example, right, and they just got home and they're mega tired, what types of things do you think that someone can get from outside, whether it's a takeaway or whether it's a grocery store or supermarket? What types of things do you think would be more nutritious, easy to consume options on the days that, for example, they might feel a little bit a bit too tired, for example?
I mean, yeah, again, if you really wanted to make it as convenient as possible, you could do a very simple meal. So, for example, some wraps or fajitas, something like that. You could buy some pre-cooked or pre-cut chicken, chuck some those, and actually wouldn't even need to cook those, or some peppers, or again, even like pre-cut vegetables, and then chuck them in a wrap, and you've got something real easy and relatively balanced. You've got your protein, your vegetables, and a carbohydrate source.
There you go. So another option for those who, might even be too tired or, too sleep deprived to meal prep a nutritious meal. There's also options of a convenience source as well. So thank you very much for your time, Luke.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning in to today's episode on all things fitness and nutrition. If you want more information on these topics, then feel free to tune in to @Luke Hanna Nutrition for more content on social media. And also, if you have any comments, please feel free to leave a comment below.